Hello everyone, and thank you for attending today's webinar. Today we have NAV Payroll with us, and they will be discussing add value to NAV ERP with integrated payroll and HR functionality. And we just ask that if you do have any questions, please go ahead and type them into the questions box, and we will get them called out and answered at the Q&A time toward the end of the webinar. And we do record all of our webinars, so this will be available for you to review again, or if you would like to share it with anyone, you're more than welcome to. That will be on our website at innovia.com by the end of the week for you to do so. So now I will turn it over to Drew from NAV Payroll, and he will kick off our presentation.
Hi everyone, this is Drew Winborn from NAV Payroll. We are going to show you some of the features that we have for both Business Central, the Business Central app, which is what I have up on my screen currently, and then also we're going to jump over to RTC in NAV, a little more familiar for you guys, for most of you guys that have started with NAV. But just to let you know, all the features that you see that we show in D365 app, we're not going to show them again over in NAV, but we do have them. So everything you see over here is definitely available over there in NAV 2015 and up, and then also in the new Business Central on-prem application. So with that, we'll get going. So just a little bit about us. When we started building this a few years ago, the goals that we had in mind were try to take all the reasons that people say they outsource and put them into, try to build a solution that works, that has all of those nice features that you might get from an outsourcer, like updated tax tables and not having to worry about certain things like that. And then we also wanted to take away some of the cumbersome, setups and things that have to happen, that at least have had to happen in the past in NAV. So when you come into the payroll, you're not having to create every single withholding, deduction, earnings code. We've built a bunch of wizards to try to make all of that, all of those codes come in automatically, and all of your default settings basically be ready to go as soon as you run the assisted setup. You're ready to go. You're ready to start processing payroll. Now you might have to add some additional deductions if you have, deductions that aren't set up by default, but that's just a matter of adding one or two things instead of coming in and spending hours and hours and hours trying to set up everything and test. So to that point, we're going to start with payroll employees. So right here we have our nice menu with our most used items right here, and then we also have an extended menu. And so if you hit this, you can see all the different things that are available. Some of these items have subgroups, so like our setup list has several different things inside of it. But this menu is really nice if you just want to see a nice layout in D365 of everything that we have in our solution. But as you can see up here, we have just the main items here as shortcuts that you can get directly to without going to that menu. And what we're going to do here is start with a new employee wizard. So this is similar to the wizard, the assisted setup for the entire system, but we've already done that part in D365. This is going to give us all the major fields of the employee card. And I'm going to actually go ahead and set up an employee as fast as I can here, not to bore you. But I do think it's important to point out that, I do think it's important on this webinar to actually go through the wizard and show that we can, as soon as we set up an employee, we have a bunch of information that we can start using already loaded by our templates. So I'm just going to set up the major fields that are needed and skip all the ones that aren't. We're going to hire them on the 7th of 2018. And posting groups, while I'm here, I should mention the nice part about the employee posting group is just like with the product posting groups or the customer posting groups, we use a combination system, just like it does in other places in NAV. But what that allows you to do is the combination of the posting group with the earnings code or with the deduction code or with the withholdings. That's what directs it to the correct GL. And this keeps you from having to set up regular time warehouse, regular time production, regular time admin, regular time sales. You don't have to set up, 10, 15 different codes that are really all the same thing. They're just regular time, overtime, vacation pay, sick pay, all your normal ones. But in some solutions, you have to set up a separate code for each different department to make it go to the correct GL account. Well, not in ours. So you have one set of payroll codes that you use for all these different earnings. And then based on the link of the posting group, this could be a production person, shipping person, receiving, however you have your stuff grouped. You put that on the employee card, and that's going to be the GL account it goes to. All right, so let's keep going here. We'll give them one withholding allowance. Now, this is the part where we're going to use a labor division or position template to set up the rest of the information. And what's really nice about this is you can put in the standard PTO. If you don't give PTO or you don't start accruing PTO for a month, 3 months, whatever it may be, you can put in a date formula there so that it'll automatically give them time that starts accruing some date in the future. Same thing for the deductions. If you don't have deductions that kick in right immediately or employer contributions that kick in immediately, you can set these templates up with dates in the future. And then the template also has whether it's going to be hourly or salary, things like that. So all of these templates are by position, so you can set them up in advance, and then you just say you want to use them to set up the remainder. This is where I'm going to say this is an admin person or shipping or whatever it may be. And then we're going to go ahead and give them the same date here on the salary starting date as the hire date. I'm just going to put in 25 and make it an hourly rate there, $25 an hour. And you can see that it took a little bit, just a second there before it moved to the last one because it was going out, finding all the templates, putting everything into the employee card in the correct places. Okay. So now we can see we have this employee. So we just created him from the wizard. He's got all his main information in here. Now, of course, if there's something you want to come in and fill in that wasn't filled in by the wizard, you can do it here. He's a print check employee. He's going to just have a normal printed payroll check, but you can definitely set up direct deposits and multiple ones if you want to there. Okay, so everything looks good, and let's check out what was done here by the templates. So we can see we've got a salary in there based on the hourly rate that we put in. Inside the salary, you can see who it was entered by, if it was modified, who it was modified by. And then you can also put in multiple starting dates. So you can have, a raise once a year or whatever that you put in advance, so you're not having to come in here and remember. We're trying to eliminate the posted sticky notes on the corners of the HR payroll people monitors so that you can come in here and set these things up in advance and not have to worry about it. It'll just pick up the new one when it crosses over the date. Okay, close out of that. Let's see what else we got from the templates. So we got some, your really, normal, a lot of companies have your 401k, your health insurance. So these are going to be a deduction. And then on the other side, we have the employer contribution. So the benefit set up here. And so it's all in one place. It's set up by the template, but if you needed to come in here and tweak it, of course you could. So it's at the employee level, but the template allows you to kind of have that global setting, and then you can come in here and make it more detailed or make it specific to a certain employee. Another thing you can do is change from a gross amount to a fixed amount, or you can use some of our supplementary tables. So you can use a union deduction table, spouse dependent table, and what those allow you to do is say, If they have a spouse and one or more dependents, then it's going to be this deduction amount or this employer contribution amount. So you can just direct it to that table and then have one global setting there in that table for everything instead of having to set it on each employee. So lots of different options here and how to set these up because, of course, customers use lots of different things. And no customer is the same. So we have all the options you would possibly use, hopefully. Our PTO setup, you can see we got put it at hours limit, and hours per year to accrue there, came in from the template. We also have carryover limits and lots of options here. So you can have carryover limit that's say 40 hours, but the hours limit's 120, so it's going to keep accruing up to the 120, and then but if you try to carry it over, then let's say they've used some of that 120 and they're down at 77 hours or something, it would only carry over the 40 if you had the carryover limit at 40. Here we have it at 80. So more options there. Lump sum setup is so that you can just have an anniversary date and give them time on that anniversary. And you can also use the limits with the lump sum setup. So if you have a lump sum setup of giving them 80 hours, but you have a limit of 120 and they haven't used, below that 40 hours, they're not currently at 40, then it's only going to give them the lump sum up to the limit when you run the report to add their time. Okay. So from here, also, we can preview a check. So this is great, especially when you're setting up a new employee. You don't have to run a payroll document. You can come in here, pick a week, calculate their payroll check, and it gives you everything that's going to come in on their payroll check. So you can see, okay, good, my deductions are coming in, all my federal taxes and my state withholdings coming in. I have a little picture down here where I can see the net amount. That way, if the employee is saying, okay, I want these deductions, but I want to make sure my net amount is above 700 or something like that, you can come in here and look at it. If you need to change something, keep an eye on the federal over here. So as we change this to say 100, you can see this changed right here to 80. So the federal income tax automatically recalculates. The state did as well, but FICA is, 401k is not exempt from FICA, so those did not recalculate. So everything recalculates just by changing the deduction amounts over here, and the net amount right here changes as well. So if I come in and put in 50, you'll see the net amount goes back up to 711. So you can kind of toggle these numbers and make sure that your check is good to go before you start paying that employee. Or if they just come in and want to change a deduction but want to know what that's going to do to their net, this is the easiest way to do it, because then you don't have to actually run the document, you're just previewing it. And a little bit more about our withholding. So our state withholding and federal income tax withholding, FICA, all federal taxes, FUTA and FICA, federal income tax, and then your state withholdings. And if you're in a state like California, your state disability withholding, all of those are in our tax table. So we update that. You get a fresh copy of that every night. So you don't have to worry about asking us for new tax setups. At the end of the year, we load in the taxes for the next year once we've tested them all, and then you would just have a fresh copy that's already in your database with a new effective date of, say, January 1st, 2019, with all of those new rates. And then so you're just immediately when you cross over the year, you're calculating with the new rates. So I'm going to get on my third-party payroll soapbox for a second. So that's one thing that a lot of customers say is, well, they keep up with all the taxes. Well, they do, but in their contracts, all the contracts that we've analyzed, and I think most all of them do this, is they say you're still responsible for your payroll. So if they mess up something, then they're not going to take the blame for that. They're relying on you to double check everything, double check all the setups, and make sure that everything gets withheld that's supposed to get withheld. Some of them that even go as far to say, if you tell us something is wrong and we don't fix it, then it's still not our fault. So they really they really put some stuff in that fine print to protect themselves, to make sure that, you know, if they do make a mistake, that all the companies out there have signed off on double checking the payroll. So I just want to mention that you know, we have our taxes loaded in the tax table, and a lot of times those third parties kind of give you the a feeling of comfort and that they're liable, but they're really, most of their contracts are going to say that you're liable for your own payroll. And it's kind of crazy to us to think that, you know, you would have someone else running your payroll, basically looking at all this detail that we're looking at here, yet they're still saying that you're responsible, even though you're just sending them, you know, the time and the deductions that are set up on each employee and all that stuff. So anyway, I'm going to get off my soapbox now, but that's my third party rant there for a second. So back to our menu here, I just want to go to some posted payroll to show you. So we have, once it's posted, we have these a nice header document here with a lot of information right in the list. You can click in any of them and see all the detail on the posted payroll document. So from here, we can see the withholding allowances, pay cycle, things like that, total earnings, the actual check amount over here, check number. So most of the information you would need right from the list of posted documents, but then if you need to click in, you can see the whole, all the lines of including employer taxes, employer contributions, and all that stuff. Also, if you need to print a check stub, it's simple as just hitting up here, and it will download into your browser if you're in the D365 web client. And you can see here's my check stub. Everything's the same as on the check, but I just get the void on the actual check part. Okay, now that we've been spending some time over here and got familiar with the D365 app, I'm gonna bounce over here. So this is your probably what you're more familiar with looking at. This is the full client of NAV, and then we're going to start here with, let's see, the assisted setup. That's what I want to show. So since we're talking wizards and ease of setup, let's also show here. So we have this setup D365 US payroll. And once you go through this assisted setup, what it's going to do is I'm going to exit out of it because I've already got my codes in this database. But what it's going to do is set up all these payroll codes for you. So all your standard deduction, earnings, things like that, all of that stuff gets set up for you from the assisted setup. It brings in the tax table from our server. It goes through the payroll setup table and it adds your user as a payroll user. It also sets all the default settings in that setup table. So there's tons of off-on switches. For example, if you want overtime to come in from another source and you want it to auto approve it, then you can set that up. If you want us to calculate the overtime for you, so you're just going to bring in the hours and then you want us to bring in the overtime lines based on the different state laws. Most of them are over 40 hours in a week, but some states do have over 8 hours in a day as overtime, over 12 is double time. So you can have us apply those rules once you bring it in, or you can check that to auto approve everything that's brought in, because you have a time clock to say that already has all the information broken out by pay code and things like that. So that's just one example of many, many, many things in the setup table. Security groups are another thing you can turn off or on in there. You have multiple people running payroll batches. You can turn on security groups so one person can only see their specific employees and their specific batches, and the other person, you know, the same. Then usually in the security groups, you have an admin that can see everything. So that's again, another setting. Those things come in from the assisted setup, though, that way you don't have to go through them one by one. Once everything's set up, you can just go into that table and decide, do I want to change this or that, depending on what it does. Okay, so now that we're here over in the payroll codes that have been created, I also want to show if you do need to create an additional deduction, how you can do it. So we're just going to come in here. We're going to set up another 401k. I'm going to call it ABC. And then we get another wizard. So here we're asking, is it pre-tax or post-tax? And then if it's pre-tax, what is it? So we're going to say this one's a retirement of 401k. And we're going to hit OK. And when we do that, we get all of these things populated. So from our tax table, we get the deduction limit, catch-up limit, and the total contribution limit automatically comes in. It's checked off as exempt from federal, but not from FUTA or FICA because of this wizard knows what it is. If it was health insurance, a 125 plan, then it would come in here and check off the FICA and the FUTA because those are actually exempt from those taxes. And the state and local setup, it automatically checked off the state. So again, with the wizard, this is going to take care of 95 to 99% of your normal setups. But you can always come in here and check these things off after you've set it up. So the wizard brings in what it thinks everything should be set to, and then you can change it if you like. Okay, let's talk about the procedures here. So if you have a deduction that happens to be one of the more complicated ones, where maybe you're using, a good example of this is something like a disability that's using an estimated income. So it doesn't really care what your income is, the hours you worked on a week-to-week or basis, but it's going to use the estimated income for the year. Things like that have these oddball calculations, maybe then they want you to check that, take it from an annual income down to a weekly income, check it against some sort of a limit. If it's under the limit, multiply it times this percentage. If it's over the limit, multiply it times another. Well, we can do all of that. That's just not the norm. So we try to have everything set up in here, again, by the wizards, the defaults make it easy. But if you need something like that, we have that ability. So you can see here we have some additional garnishment calculations and things like that in here. We can go into one of these in a second and look at the options that are available. So this is where we would attach to the actual code some calculation that it needs to go through. And hopefully you only have a few of these, if any. But if you do, the key here is you don't have to go into the deduction and just put in a fixed amount on every employee and it be different on every single employee because it's some weird calculation. You can actually set it up so it goes through that calculation when it populates the payroll document. Okay, so let's just take a look at these. I think disability, we have something set up in here. Yeah, so you can see all the different stuff that you can do. You can you can select the pay codes that are going to be active on this calculation of earnings. So I can go through here and check off that regular is active and maybe bonus is not, because if it's a bonus, then this calculation shouldn't take that into consideration. So you can check off the earnings codes that are applicable. Then you can do any of these operations here. So you see we have tons of different operations to choose from. And we also have the ability to actually bring in numbers from different tables. So you can come in here and pick table and field IDs and bring in, if you needed to, you could bring in the withholding number or something from an employee if that was part of one of these oddball calculations. But the key is you could bring in pretty much anything from anywhere and use it in these calculations to get to the number you're looking for. All right. Let me just check my list and make sure that I have not skipped anything. Okay, doing good. We also have some, we also have the reports here. So let's take a look at those. We have your federal reports in here. All the federal reports are built and ready to be printed out on the forms. We also have some additional reporting, like benefit reporting 834 forms that you can build an EDI file so that you can send that to your with Carrier Connect through your to your broker, who will take that file and update their information. So we have some of those things. We also have the ability to build your own report. So we can take a look at this. And what this allows you to do is build a report based on any payroll codes that you want. So if we look at earnings by department, you can see I've got some departments up, are my regular and overtime, and then I've got my dimension filters. You can add as many dimension filters as you want, so you can use all your regular dimensions that you have in your system. Plus we have custom dimensions. So you can see we have 4 custom dimensions that you can use, and those can be anything. It can be you want to track labor by production order number, or you want to track by service order number, or by fund number. We can also do job and tasks. So any of these are available for you to track information by and then pulled out in this report. And it looks like this when you pull it out. So you can see it splits the time based on the fund number here in this example. We also have one with department where we're splitting time based on the department dimension. So we can split your expense by any of these parameters when you run this report. All right, let's take a look at another one of these, because that was more of kind of a financial, we're analyzing our expenses. This one's going to be more, excuse me, of a payroll related report where we're pulling out both sides, ERE sides of FICA, Social Security, both sides of Medicare, and then we're pulling out the federal income tax. So this is going to be our EFTPS report that we need to make our deposits. And this is what it looks like when it comes out. So you can see right here, I would have my total liability rolled up on the vendor ledger for me. And this total amount here is $16,000. But I also have the breakout that I need when I go to the EFTPS website and make the deposit. So let's also take a look at the posting setups real quick, because I just want to show how we actually link to the vendors. So you can link directly to a vendor, and this one I just put in a description of EFTPS 941, but you can link to the vendor so you're actually posting directly to the vendor ledger, and then when you run your payment journal, all of that detail gets rolled up into one lump sum that you owe whoever that may be. It could be the 401k company, it could be the state entity for state withholding, the SUDA employer tax goes to a different entity most of the time. So it could be any of those vendors, but the nice part is it's keeping track of all that and putting it on the correct vendor based on this posting setup. That's again, it's this combination of the employee posting group and the code, the payroll code, which is directing it to the correct vendor or GL. And then when you run your payment journal, you probably would want to have a payment method on the vendors of payroll so that you can separate all of them out and see what you owe each vendor. Then if you need detailed reports behind that lump sum, then again, we have these type of reports that are available to be built in the payroll layout. The EFTPS actually gets built by the wizard automatically, so you have a nice example in there, but you can make this anything you want. You know, you could have state withholding, state disability, you could have your whole EDD report for California built out in this, just as an example. All right, I think we are getting close to being showing the self-service portal. So let's go ahead, and before I show that, let me just show that we do have in the report section a register type piece of functionality. So this is something that you can, after you run payroll, look at different pay cycle types. You can make your periods kind of similar to account schedules, but we try to make it a little easier to pick what you want. You can pick source type of here of GL, vendor, payroll ledger entry. Your lines can be different GL codes, vendors, or pay cycles if you're on the payroll ledger. You can filter basically on anything you want down here. And then all of these numbers roll up into a nice, lump sum here, and then you can click into it. So, and it'll apply all the filters that are in your setup to the detail. So if you want to take a look at all the withholdings and then you're like, that looks high for this payroll period compared to the last one. Maybe I should check out the detail. You can click in there and look at the detail. Okay. So before we jump to self-service, I just want to show how it works. So we have on our payroll employee card here a manager user ID, and what this is used for is when they request something. So the self-service portal is basically to try to keep the employee everything they would normally be requesting to the HR person, payroll person, maybe to the manager. Keep it going through the self-service portal, so then we can direct it where it needs to go based on who the manager is. And things like that. So we can come in here, set up the manager user ID. Then we can also turn on an automatic email alert. So just in case the manager maybe forgets to check every day who's requested time off and things like that, then they could come in here. We can come in here and say that they need to receive an automatic email. And then it's going to roll up all their employees into one email and say, these are all the things that your employees are requesting from you, and it's going to keep bothering them every night, let's say, with that email until they come in here and approve the time or do what they need to do. So that's for the manager user ID. We also have the employee user ID here. And then we also have the login and password, which would be set up in the administration. I actually have those hidden, but they're part of the administration tab, so you can put in your login and password for this employee, and then they can come over here and log in. Let's see if I'm still, nope, I'm actually need to log in again. It automatically refreshes and knocks you out after a certain amount of time. Here we go. So now I'm in my self-service portal, and let's talk about what we have in here. So we have an employee change request. So you can come in here and set up the values. The user obviously would not do this part. This would be your HR payroll would come in here, set up all the values that should be able to be changed. So maybe you have some, personal information that really doesn't affect anything, but it just needs to be kept up to date on the employee card that you allow them to change. And then once they change it here, they just change it in this field and submit it for approval. And then it comes right over here into the Role Center. And you can see I've already got one requested where I'm changing the address of this employee, and I can just select and approve this to get that pushed through to their employee card. So I get a chance to look at it before it actually goes over there. We also have the hours approval. So you can come in here and see what people have requested, what hours they've put in. If they've requested time off, then it'll show you the request here, and then you select and approve that just by hitting the select button and approve. Okay, so that's the employee change request, and then we have the PTO request where you can choose, a date and then put in you want vacation. If someone puts in that they're requesting sick pay for 2 weeks in advance, I probably wouldn't believe them. But hey, if they know they're going to get sick somehow, then I guess they could put that in there. You can also turn these off though, so that to that point, if you don't want to allow them to be able to choose sick pay from the list in the NAV client, there's an available as PTO on web portal, and then that's going to take this out of the list if it's not checked off. You can also see your hours remaining, projected year-end hours, a bunch of good information here in the self-service portal. We have all of our posted documents, so you can see all the posted documents here. If I need, instead of bothering my payroll person for a check stub, I can come in here, just send that check stub to myself, so that if I need to turn it in somewhere, I have that ability. We also have time entry. So we can look here. Now these have, just as an example, have a ton of parameters on them. Normally, for what we see, most companies use 1 or 2 parameters here. They might use a department and a project, or maybe they only use production order number. But we put all these in here so you can just kind of see the flexibility. And also these 4 over here are custom dimensions, which means that they can change. So these can be different fields and tables inside of NAV. So we can use jobs and tasks, we can use your standard dimensions, or we can also use any custom table and field ID in the system, and then you can put those parameters on the time. All right, the last thing we have is company documents. So I can come in here and I can sign my document, just put a little smiley face there. Oh, he has no legs. Oh, okay. Well, they're very short. Anyway, so we'll accept this. And you can see here that once I accept this, sign this document and accept, then my employee over in the NAV client is going to have this right there. So you can see their signature here. You can see when they signed it. If they cancel it, you can see that they canceled. Maybe they read the employee handbook and didn't think that this job was for them. Who knows? Then they have to cancel it, or they cancel it, or because they have questions or something. And then they can come back in and approve it again, maybe after they cancel it. But the key here is that all your this keeps all your onboarding documents together, you know, and you can put them in one place and have the employees sign them through the web portal. Another nice feature of that Create Employee Wizard that we did at the very beginning is you can actually send onboarding documents from it. So you can send them manually too from here. So this will open up a screen that asks you what state they're in and what the employee email address is, but it'll take the email address from the highlighted employee and put it in here for you, but you can change it if you want. And then you can send them all the onboarding documents you have. If there's no filter on it, it'll send it. So like the federal documents or employee handbook would probably have no filter, but you might also have stuff that's state specific that you don't want to send to an employee in Oklahoma, you know, all the New York onboarding documents. So you can filter by state as well. While we're here, we can talk about the other HR tracking info we have here. We can put in any code we want. These are just code fields, so I can make as many of them as I want. I can give them effective dates, and then I can set required values. So I can say this one has a required value. It's a drug test. It has to be yes. And then if it's not yes, it's going to give you a warning if you try to run payroll. So it's going to say, you know, you haven't, maybe they have taken the drug test and everything's good, but you haven't marked it in the HR tracking table, which is where we're tracking all of this information. Then if you want to link to it, you can. So you just can, to each line in the HR tracking, you can just come in here and you can link, and then you can say, you know, there's my HR tracking document, and then once you click on that link, it opens up the PDF automatically for you. And each line can have a separate link on it. So we try to keep notes and links on everything in the HR section, since those are highly popular. Employee dependents, so we can put in a dependent with some starting and ending information. We can check off if they're an emergency contact or not here. Certifications and qualifications. So these are used in the applicant tracking that we have. We have applicant tracking. You can come in here, put in the qualifications that are needed for this particular position, and then you can tell them each applicant, you can give them a grade on the qualification and say whether they have it or not. So they'll end up with a score of they have 4 out of 5 qualifications, and on those 4 out of 5, they scored an overall, you know, 95% or something. However you want to kind of quantify how well they did on each qualification, you can do it there. But the nice part is in the applicant tracking list, it'll actually sum up those numbers, and so you can quickly sort by them and see which employee scored the highest and has the most qualifications out of what's needed for that position. All right, so now we're actually going to get to the part that if you were outsourcing, the outsource would be doing for you. Everything else we've done on the setups and stuff, pretty much you would most likely have to do yourself, either through their portal or through a time and attendance system where you transmit them the information. But this is the part that running the batch is really the part they do, and they charge quite a bit for it. So here in the batch, I want to point out a few things. So we have all the information that's in the header of the payroll document, but the detail is in several places that you can get to easily. So if you want to just look at it real quickly, it's right here on the side in the batch line summary. We also have a full batch summary. So this is everything in the batch summed up. Okay. We can also get to PTO time here if we want to look at the ledger. So you can see we had some accruals, and then our accrual went up, and then we took an hour. So all of these things are drillable over here on the fact boxes. We can add, if for some reason, the time did not get approved. So I took some personal day hours and I didn't get that approved by my manager, but the manager comes to you and says, yeah, this was fine. I just didn't get a chance to approve it, but you need to add it to the payroll document. That's not a problem. You can do that with any of these that are here in the header: vacation, sick, holiday. Holiday is one that we should talk about for a second, because you can set up a calendar in advance that says all the holiday hours that should automatically be brought into the payroll document. And you can link those to the employee. So you might have a production schedule versus an admin schedule versus whatever, or sales schedule. You can have different calendars that you link to the employee. The holiday hours will automatically come into the payroll batch in the payroll document. So again, what we're trying to do here, our goal is that when you run this batch, it's as easy and as simple as it possibly can be, because you have your time approved that automatically comes in from the different managers and the employees that's requested it through the self-service portal. We have our holidays that come in automatically from our calendars. Everything should come in here, and it should just be a matter of quickly looking at the information, a couple minutes, and then posting the batch. So in this example, though, I do want to show that we can manually change things. So we're going to change that to 1 hour of personal time, and then we're going to look at the payroll document and see what it did. So you can see here, we added 1 hour of personal time to the lines of the document. We can take this 1 hour out from the header, and you can see everything recalculates, right? Everything recalculates, the line disappears. So that is, seems like it'd be pretty easy thing to do, but we kind of pride ourselves on, the flexibility of being able to change this stuff, because it's actually pretty complicated to make these headers change lines and vice versa. But the key for the user is it's super simple just to add something, and the line's going to automatically change to what it should be. You can even come in here and override something. So if I want to change this 401k to say $50, you see my federal withholding went up because I'm taking money away from an exempt deduction. So my federal withholding automatically went up. So you can even change a line and everything inside will recalculate. All right, so these are another thing that outsourcers will do for you, is they'll make all the direct deposits happen. Well, we can do that too. So we're going to export all of this to an ACH file. We're going to print all of our check stubs. There's our check stubs, all right. We're going to transmit that ACH file, and then we're going to post the batch. Okay, so that right there, in essence, is the main thing that someone that would an outsourcing payroll company would do, because they would still need you to set up the employees, still need you to give them time and attendance, still need you to give them the deductions that are applicable for each employee. All of that information still has to be set up, but then they run the batch and have the tax tables just like we do, and then post the batch. And then, but the problem is, then they send you, so you have all this information by dimension and job and task. And some companies, a lot of companies, not some, they're 25 to 50% of their entire cost structure in their whole company might be labor costs. So you have this huge chunk of your cost structure that has all of these great metrics you can use inside NAV, like we've gone through a bunch: the dimensions, the jobs, the tasks, giving you ways to analyze your labor cost by item or by customer or by job or project. But then when you push it all out and get it back, then it just comes back. And this is the same thing for if you're using just a separate system. So if you're running payroll outside of NAV in Mass or in QuickBooks or something like that, just to have a system to run payroll in, but you're using NAV or D365 for everything else, then you have all this great information in NAV, but you can't use it with your payroll costs. You can't use it with your labor expense. And so you send it all out to a third party or some other system, and then you get it back as one big number that goes to the GLs. Or maybe they separate it for you by employee, by GL account, but you still don't have any project dimensions, jobs, any of the custom dimensions we can set up, any of those things that can make your life easy as far as analyzing costs. You can't really have that unless you're running your payroll inside of your same system. So I thought I was done with my rant earlier, but I guess I had a little bit of additional rant to go, so sorry about that. Okay, so let's talk about some of the ways we get information in here, because everybody can do this a different way and we want to make it easy. So if you want to bring in your information from a time clock, we have a way to cross-reference to the employees, and the really great part is we can cross-reference to the earnings codes. So we can pull a CSV file from a time and attendance system that you don't want to get rid of. You're like, hey, everybody already knows this time and attendance. It probably does something wonderful, like scans their thumb or something, so that you know that no one's cheating on their time when they clock out or clock in. And it puts everything into, an hours by payroll code file, or just maybe lump sum hours by week, or whatever it may be. And we can link everything from that to an Excel column number. And then this allows us to just quickly be up and running with any time and attendance system without having to do 10 hours of development to get the import working. So we can cross-reference to the employees, we can cross-reference to the pay codes, and we can bring them all in. We can also bring in time, like we mentioned over here. If you want them to use the self-service portal, they certainly can. They can fill out the timesheets in here, and we can have mandatory fields on some of this stuff, so that they have to put in whatever service order they were working on, or maybe the customer they were working on, or whatever it is. We can also turn on a bunch of warnings and errors in here that don't allow you to enter in overtime until you've hit 40 hours in that week, and things like that. So here's another way to get your time into the system. Then this is the cross-reference we were looking at before. Let's talk about a few other ways, though. So we can also pull time from timesheets. So we can, if you're using the timesheets or you're using the service lines in NAV, and you're like, hey, we already have our information in this spot in NAV, and we don't want to have to put it in another place. Why would we have to do that? That's double entry, and that's, there's no way we're going to do that. Well, we have a way to pull it from the timesheets, pull it from the service lines. We can even mark off the service lines that we want to pull the time from. Maybe some of them are not, time that you want to pull, like you're billing something, but you don't want to pull it over to payroll. We can separate those. And the way we do this is because we can tie to resources. So on the employee card, you can tie to the resource card, and then you can have those kept in sync even. So if you change something on the resource card or in the payroll employee card, that's kind of, your payroll employee might be the record that you want to always change and keep up to date. But then you don't want to have to come over to the resource card and change something over there. So you can have it change automatically. We can sync up those. We also have, of course, we integrate with the general ledger. So after you post your document, you come over here into the history and the posted payroll processing, and just like anywhere else in NAV, we can navigate. We can see that we hit some PTO accrual, the payroll ledger, payroll header, check ledger, vendor ledger entries, and the GL. So we can look at those entries that came over here hit the GL. If we were splitting by dimension, we'd have all the dimensions listed out here. If we had that information on this payroll document, this was just an hourly employee or a salary employee with no dimensions, so there's blank. But as you can see from the self-service portal and other places, we can split all this time by dimension as we post it to the GL. So that way, if you're doing some sort of a consolidation with a bunch of different GL values across the top of your financial, and then a total consolidated, we can split out all that labor expense by those GL codes. All right. Is there anything left? I think I did mention the payroll report, but I just want to show it one more time and show that when you pick here, you can also, if you don't want to make it part of the layout, you can just hit right here, and then you can decide any dimensions that you want to split out your report by when you at runtime, when you're actually running this payroll. Are there any questions?
Yes. Okay. So The first question is, why process payroll internally versus outsourcing?
I think I tried to answer that a bunch of times throughout the webinar, but I guess the highlights would be, well, there's lots, but the highlights would be when you're using your NAV system and with dimensions, jobs, projects, departments, all those things you love and use about NAV to be able to analyze cost, then you can't use that if you're outsourcing. All of that information is lost. So they would send back your GL balances after your payroll. It would just be flat. There would be nothing there to help analyze by dimension or job or anything like that. Another thing is cost. Outsourcers are expensive. And as you could see from my demonstration, really all of the things that we did up to the payroll batch were still things that you have to do in-house. The misconception is that you just tell an outsourcer we're outsourcing and then you're done and they just send payroll checks. Well, that's not really the case. You have to keep track of all the employees, the deductions, their salaries, their hours, the time and attendance, and you have to send all that somehow to the outsourcer. And then really the outsourcer just runs the batch and sends the checks or makes the direct deposits, which we can print checks or do direct deposits either way. And then if there's a mistake. So one thing that I didn't mention is that we have the ability here to just reverse a document. So if I'm showing now a posted payroll document, but one of our last ones here, we can just hit reverse and reverse this entire document at once. So if you make a mistake, you can reverse one document, that's as easy as it was right there, or multiples. You can go to the payroll ledger and put in a bunch of different filters if you want, or just one filter, but you can reverse multiple documents at once. So if you make a mistake with hours or something like that, or the payroll processor, your outsourcer makes a mistake, it could take a week or two to get that resolved and get the new payroll check out with the corrected amount and the old one voided and all that. When you're in-house, you have all the control right here, all the controls at the tip of your fingers. You have all the detail, you have everything in the GL by all the dimensions. I could go on for another hour, but I will stop now with that one.
Thank you. Can the software be programmed for multiple rates based on what job is being worked on?
Yes. So we have an earnings rate table. So I will quickly show it. So this allows you to put in what's being worked on or different earnings codes, and then do pick a multiplier or a rate that just applies to that employee. You can apply it across the board to all employees. You can apply it by labor division. You can apply it by posting group or to single employees. So this is a really flexible table. It can have start date and end date, and then you put in the value of that job or whatever it is, and then they would get paid by that. We also have prevailing wage set up in here. So if you have to deal with prevailing wages, you can set up your prevailing wage code, and then you can tell the system whether fringe benefits are included in the prevailing wage or not, and it will make sure that they get that hourly rate on the time that is entered with that prevailing wage code.
Okay, thank you. And NAV Payroll, is that available in NAV 2016?
Yes, 2015 and above. We can go back to 2013 and 2013 R2, but it doesn't have some of our latest and greatest stuff. So, but everything from 2015 and up, we can do.
Okay, thank you. And what about the software, the time clock software? What would you suggest that we use?
We have integrated with a bunch of time and attendance systems, but the one that we use the most often is called Easy Clocking. They just have a really nice web-based browser that our client, that's a web client for looking at your time, and then we've integrated with them a bunch, so it's really easy to get the time communicating from their time clock into our hours detail, which we need to run the payroll.
Okay. And typically, how long does it take to implement NAV Payroll?
So we've done it it's been a range so far of between 12 hours was the fastest, up to 80 or 90 was probably the most. The 80 or 90 though was because we were doing a bunch of things for the customer related to service orders and service items that were very specific to their process and how they needed it to work, that really wouldn't be applicable to hardly any other customer out there. So our standard that we give everyone is 40 hours, but that can be cut down based on if the customer can set up the employees and the salary deduction PTO information or load templates for us on all that, we can cut it down some. And if they already have check stock that is one of the major ones that's like compatible with some of the other payroll systems out there, then we don't have to spend any time on the check layout at all. We already have it pre-built. So there's definitely things that can get it below 40, but I'd say 40 is kind of the one that we give most people to start with. Once we see your payroll register, we can tell you, we might be, we could tell you we could probably do this in 25 or 30, or based on your payroll register, it might be 50 or 60 because of a bunch of oddball deductions and things like that.
Okay, thank you. And then one last one. What options do we have using the HR payroll? I'm not sure if I understood this one or not, if you had gone over it during the presentation.
Sure. I'm not 100% sure I understand, but I'll take a stab at it. I think if they're talking about the HR self-service portal, then this solution over here, then we just sell this separately. So you buy NAV Payroll, and then if you want your employees to have the self-service, we sell that at a separate cost. So that's really the our HR functionality is the employee self-service along with all the HR sections that we showed here. So all of these HR sections up here with the signatures and the employee information and the onboarding and the qualifications, that all just comes with the software, but it's just the self-service portal that is an additional annual fee.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for the presentation. It was very well informative. I hope everybody got a lot of takeaways from this.
All right. Well, yeah, and I think you said it's available by video, right? So they can watch it if they had to drop off early or something like that. You'll put it up on your website.
Yes, I will have it up on the website by the end of the week. And I just want to thank everyone for attending. And we look forward to seeing you on one of our future webinars. And we do have a couple more coming up before we head off to Summit. Next week we have mobile warehouse and shop floor data collection. InsightWorks will be doing a presentation on that on October 9th. And then we have productivity gains from warehouse automation in NAV. Bob Beard is going to be presenting on that on October 11th. And then, of course, come see us at booth 529 at Summit. We will be there October 15th through the 18th, so we would love to talk with you. Stop by our booth 529. And I just want to thank everyone again for attending. Thank you to NAV Payroll for the presentation. And we look forward to seeing you on our next webinar. Have a great day, everyone.